think you've probably already detected this as a theme, both among the grant makers and among the grantees. But first and foremost is your ability to quantify your impact and talk about it in a compelling way. And I realize that in the world of human services, that can be difficult. Some things like early reading scores are very easy to measure. You can give the kids a test, or maybe the state already gives them a test, and you can just get those data. But finding a sort of a rational way to think about the impact you're trying to have and how you're going to measure it, and then how you're going to talk about it in a way that is exciting and compelling to the outside world. I dream about a day when that is normal, that like I don't have to say that on panels because everybody is doing it. I was at, there's an organization that if you are a data nerd like me and like my fellow panelists, that you should absolutely join, called Results for America. That is a movement of organizations and funders encouraging particularly public source, but private source as well, dollars to be invested in what works. Resultsforamerica.org. And we had an opportunity to hear from Jonathan Greenblatt, who runs the Office of Social Innovation at the White House. And their estimate is that 1% of all federal money goes towards evidence-based practice. So I think all of us here are both using evidence and data as a way to grow our organization, but I think we're also trying to work together to change the way funders think about education and to change the way the ecosystem of both public and private money moves, so that the approaches that, like Gabrielle's and ours, have a basis in evidence and have measurable outcomes are getting 99% of the pot and not 1%. The second big thing for me, I think, is really thinking about talent. And I know that a lot of times in a small organization, you're very focused on on fundraising and on trying to sort of get to that next $500,000 or whatever the sort of increment for you is. And I think for me, the sort of the breakthrough moment was when I stopped trying to do that all myself and considered myself as the person who had to go hustle and get each grant, but rather that my job was to build a team that was going to do that and a functionality within an organization that would ultimately drive that revenue growth. And while, as Rebecca and Dean can attest, I'm still heavily involved in the fundraising enterprise and consider that one of my favorite parts of my job. I think, when you begin to think at a systems level and you begin to think about, sort of your fundraising being not about my relationship with, funder X or, whoever's coming up in my cycle in my donor database, but instead thinking about how you're attracting and retaining amazing fundraising talent into your organization, I think for me that was sort of a game changer.
Everything Michael just said, and a couple of other things. I think for Raising a Reader, because we are in a nonprofit space that has there's a lot of people care about literacy. Obviously, it's a huge issue. When you're an organization like ours, that we don't provide direct service, we work with agencies who provide direct service. It became very clear very early on that we have to tell the story in a very compelling way and really help people understand why us, what makes us different. We are not putting volunteers in a classroom. That's not what we do. So when I look at funders like Dean got it, that you have to have what the data nerds call construct validity. If you're going to intervene with families, then you measure family outcomes. If you intervene with children, you measure child outcomes. If you're intervening with children, you don't measure family outcomes. And if you're intervening with families, you don't measure child outcomes. So it's two sides of the same coin. It's really just making sure that you know who you are, you stay true to who you are, so there's no mission creep. And when you have that clear in your mind, then it's not about telling a story. It's just, this is who we are. This is what we do. This is how we help. And so for Raising a Reader, when we started to really focus on, there are very, very few family engagement programs with the evidence that we have. I don't know of too many others. Then all of a sudden, not just relationships with funders, but relationships with other nonprofits take a whole different, we really do have the chance to be thinking of the fact that we're all working together. I don't do what Michael does, Michael doesn't do what I do, but we can work together to help we see the same families, we're serving the same families. And that made a tremendous difference in how we scaled, that really helped set the scale for what we're doing. So I don't want to repeat what Michael said, because it's all, I experienced it very, very similar, exactly what he described. I think the only thing I would add is the incredible importance of evidence, and anecdotal stories are wonderful, but a way that the rigor that the evidence that you have has rigor. And I will say one other thing about rigor. We all want capital E evidence, the big scale, large scale randomized control trials, and that's great if you're a university and you've got a $1 trillion and you have a lot of capacity to do that. And we're blessed. Raising a Reader is really fortunate that we have a couple of funders that are helping us get that. But there can be a lot of rigor in informal measurements. It's not the case that you always have to have large-scale studies. I think it's important that you get there, but I would encourage you to find a university partner, an eager doctoral student. There are a lot of folks, I lived it in my other life, so I was fortunate that I kind of have it in the back of my brain, but not everybody, we all have different experiences. There are, I'm not joking, there are doctoral students who would love to do this kind of help set up informal but rigorous assessment structures that could benefit your program. And then when you talk to funders and they say, why you and not why other program? Well, this is what we do. This is why we do it. This is how we know what we do works. And it's as simple as that. I mean, not as simple as that, but you know
Actually
what I mean.
incredibly complex.
Right. But it's, I think that would be the biggest thing for us.